Thanks everybody for coming out today. We're going to get started with some special remarks from Jerry.
Well, I will start. I bet everybody in here could chime in, but David, we really just want to share, and this is a significant time for us, and this visit with the media and you is a big time. We just want to share our respect and appreciation for 5 decades of putting up with me, I think you came before. Yes, and I'm sitting up here noodling. David wrote a masterpiece on my noodling. So we're getting that down real good right here. But you've gone from here to there. I'm noodling. But seriously, David, as far as even-handed, a very balanced but accurate look at anything that I've been involved in and the Cowboys have been involved in through my view over the years. Agree with everything you've written? Of course not, at all. But have just always appreciated the effort on your part to balance it out. And they have a place for guys like you, really, in the history of the Cowboys. Blackie Sherrod, Randy Galloway, people like that. Knew Blackie back from far as back as when I played at Arkansas. I had met him back that far. And so you're right there with them. If I thought about my time with you, and as it turns out, we have spent a lot of time over the years, but it's been very, very, very special. My coach, Frank Brawls at Arkansas, once was talking to me, and he said, Jones, I've recruited and have 2 genius IQs that have played for me, Jimmy Johnson, and you're sure as hell not one of them. Barry Switzer. Well, Clarence, you sure as hell aren't in the same league. This guy sitting right here. David, I don't want to make this any more than it needs to be to recognize how much you have meant to sports, which I've always considered to be a part with you as a brother in that respect, but certainly to the extent it's been impacted the Dallas Cowboys and our great fans. We thank you and regret that you're decided to hang them up. But congratulations on a great career from our percentage.
Can I have a response?
And we always start with you.
I was going to say, I don't know if you remember, I was in the your introductory press conference at Valley Ranch on that Saturday evening, a momentous one. I remember it ended in thinking, that guy's a wild ride. I'm going to enjoy this because certainly once PR professionals get ahead of him, he's going to be more polished. He's going to be more, a little less forthcoming, be a little more buttoned up in these press conferences. Thank you for ignoring their advice.
Be careful, I've still got some microphone here. Well, I could have never dreamed when I hope that we can find pictures that would reflect you in there with that group at the time. But what's so crazy is I can remember detail of that better than I can remember yesterday. And it's just amazing at how that had evolved. And, of course, wouldn't have had any idea. I remember Stephen and my family and everybody sitting in there at that time. And I had seen Coach Landry earlier in the day. And, of course, without a question, one of the PR had Hill Knowlton, one of the best in the country. Biggest troubleshooter ever, had represented Pierre Salinger, some of the great people at all. He was my advisor. Brought him in. And then I had one of the best PR advisors that you could have in this immediate Dallas, Texas area. And Mr. Bright said, Jerry, you should let me make the change for Coach Landry. You should do that. That's not fair to anybody, and I should do it. and my PR and everybody said, no, he's not going to be here because you're coming. And be a man, step up there and take it on the chin and step up there and go do it. One of the greatest PR disasters that's ever been imagined at that time. Still living with it at that time. But those a lot of things to talk about. Again, is there anybody else in here that was at that press conference with that? Just in the back, sure is from the camera perspective. Mickey doesn't count. He's been around. But David, again, thank you, and looking forward to the time when we can sit down there and go over some of these old stories, and you can get your real truth from me at that time, okay? But guys, okay.
All right. We'll start out with the first question from David Moore.
David Moore, Dallas Morning News. You're in your discussions leading up, you're sitting at 12 here. What does it look like? There's going to be a cluster of 3, 4, 5 players you'll be happy with, and how does that have ramifications as far as your willingness to potentially move back when you're on the clock?
I think I'd like for Will to speak to it. We've yet to put the board up. I'm going to invite you all back here after this to shoot a shot of the board. But seriously, and Will, I like Will. If you don't mind, I'd like to include Will here in terms of generally where you think the board is relative to the players.
I think, every draft is different. So we're going to have a certain number of players that we consider as first-round players. And those guys that will come into contention, whether we move back or not, that will depend on the depth of the draft, how we graded those players and the decision from the decision makers.
The thing that I've noticed the most, we haven't put the board up, really. Haven't, but it's going up quick. And trust me, all the bones are there and ready to stick up there. But still, it has impressed me with the depth that there is in some of these positions, and we're not just thinking that because they're at that 12 spot. But we had no idea that Michael Parsons would drop down there to us when he did, and so it do happen. And we certainly are not going to knowingly let a great player run through us for strategy or for trades up or down. But it's a big deal. I think it's a bigger deal today, draft players playing immediately. It's more of a challenge on coach that players are coming in and you're counting on them immediately. And that's a part of the game today is a lot of young players out there.
Clarence Hill, Dallas Cowboys. Picking up here our nightmares and trading great players. How have you taken in the Luka trade and how that's transpired the last few weeks?
Well, I'm a fan of the Mavericks, big fan of the Mavericks, and consequently a big fan of Luka. The world knows that I've got my hands full thinking about what we think about over here, much less trying to figure out. I look at the Maverick through a very much entertainment eye. And I know Luka was a personal friend and watched a lot of games with us, and would hope that he would be able to watch some more games with us as we go along, know his family pretty well and his support staff pretty well. So all of that is just one as a fan. Now, Gene was All-State, scored 17 straight free throws in the state championship game. And Gene lives and dies with that basketball. And just cried when Luka left. But if I understand that, and I understand, frankly, you say, how could that happen? I've got a little bit probably better understanding how something like that can happen.
Regarding the draft, what is your goal for the 12th pick? And you said you haven't put the board up. Is it you want an instant impact player? you don't want to target a position. Obviously, you want BPA, but do you feel that you can get a guy that can be an instant impact player at 12?
Yes. Period.
And regarding the first round, how many first round picks, or you haven't even got that far? How many first round talents are in this draft?
We haven't gotten to the number yet, but it typically every year it's somewhere around on our board. It's somewhere around 15 to 18, and we'll see how that falls out this year.
Todd Archer with ESPN for Stephen, Jerry, and Will. When you have a new coaching staff and new assistants that haven't been part of your process, how do you go about? Do they get more leeway or more vision from you guys on what they're thinking, or do they have to earn their stripes at all through the process to understand how you guys work it when they come in during the process?
I think I think at the end of the day, one of the things that has been a big contributor to our success is the communications that we've had with any staff, whether it was Mike McCarthy's, whether it was Jason Garrett's, now whether it's Coach Schotty's, is the communication we have with the scouting department, with Jerry, with myself, in terms of giving a vision of whether it what Schotty and his offensive staff want, whether it's what Schotty and Eberflus and the defensive staff want, getting a vision for the type of players that are going to enable us to have success on the field and what type of player we're looking for. And that does vary. It actually gives, one of the things that gave Jerry great pause is the fact that we're looking at 3 different defensive coordinators in 3 years. And even though they run certain things that are similar, there are things that are different. And when they're different, then that requires maybe a little different type of talent that you might be looking for in Dan Quinn's scheme versus Eberflus's schemes. But if you communicate that and communicate it well, you can certainly work through that, and you certainly know what you're looking for in the draft. And hats off to the scouting department. Hats off to Coach Schotty and his coaching staff in terms of the communication that's gone on with Jerry, myself, Will, and the scouting department, so we can have that vision for what we should be picking or what we should be looking for in a player when we get ready to draft a player.
One of the real advantages that I saw, and we all saw, Schotty knows our team. He knows it as well as any coach could have known it other than Mike. And that was big, and that is big. And so we're getting the benefit of those new coaches sitting in he's encouraged them to really be active in the process. And they were active, Will, with you scout on the road, going to workouts, certainly at the combines. But Schotty has got them really not only fired up, but really talking the talk. And actually been great in the draft room, evoking from them. None of them have had any hesitancy to speak up and a value. But you're sitting there looking at Flus. I hadn't heard Flus in a long time, and he's had some experience from Chicago to give one under his wings and seen a lot of things that might work, might not work, those kinds of things. It is a great thing to have a makeup of that much input. And probably, have we ever come in here at this time and not had the board done? I don't think we have. You might not have the timing of being in here. But one of the reasons that board's not up until today is because this has been a longer, to me, process. But these coaches that Schotty have got, they're ready to gnaw through the wall. They're ready to roll. I mean, they're really excited, and Schotty's encouraging them to. And, boy, you're seeing a lot of different ways to look at a player. And that should be very helpful to us, not just because these guys are going to be coaching them, because you're trying to get the right kind of player out there. There's never been, ever, since I've owned this team, a draft pick that I didn't in any way really get the input from who it is that would help solve the problem. No way. I looked at Will, boy, when we're getting ready to pick, I'll look at him, and if he even blinks, I'll look what he's blinking about. when we're getting ready to pick, and I'll measure Shoddy, or I'll be looking back there at Flus at this particular time and looking for body language, looking for conviction, looking for that kind of thing. Now, that's on top of the arduous process of evaluating them by standards that are really, we're in agreement so much. We're one of the best drafting teams in the NFL. I'll say that. We are. And that's because of the hard work that goes on to get there, and it's because of, in my mind, the process we use to make the decisions. I do not make the decision about that player. That's been made cumulatively, and it's been made cumulatively here and there, and I'm a tiebreaker maybe. But I hope to hell that I'm sitting there listening to all of this, sat in on all the meetings, been in all the stuff, and I hope that we come up with the very best decision. Not to mean that you can't water them down to complete homogenation if you wanted to. And you could literally get so much opinion that it would go and it'd be totally homogenized. And so it'd be hard to find maybe the edge that you're looking for right there. But that's the process that we go through there. And by the way, I don't mind telling you now, if somebody comes up and starts coming out of my mouth right about the time we're getting ready to pick, and it's an errant idea or an errant thing, don't you think it isn't all hell to pay now? Nobody around here is afraid to really step up here and say, wait a minute. Let's look at this real good. And Shoddy's already shown me. I sit beside him, and he's already shown me he'll work my ass over.
Brian, how much do you want to get speed, more speed on your offense?
It's always something you look at. Todd, at the end of the day, this is an exciting time of year. Speed in this league is important. It's not the only way to do it. The one thing about speed it gives you something you don't have to coach. And so the way we're going to play and the style that we're going to play, speed is an advantage, but it's not the only thing that we look at. And again, to speak to what Jerry and Steven and really Will were talking about, I've thoroughly enjoyed the process. The conversations, the disagreements, quite honestly, and then watching the kind of the conviction when you ultimately put the final grade on a player it's been awesome, and I feel really good heading into Thursday night.
John
Machota with The Athletic. Jerry, there's been some of your 30-year visitors have talked about you having their mothers get them on the phone. Why have you done that? And maybe if you could share a story of maybe something that's come from that.
Well, it principally is for the moms and the dads. And I like to see the interplay between the player and his dad or his mom. I like to see that. I like to see it come back and forth. I think I can get a little read for their influence when you have it there. One player I came in, his dad's a serious coach. And boy, I'm telling you, when I brought up, I hope he understands he's going to have to work harder than he ever has in his life. He just, he had that look on his face. He will work harder than he's ever worked in his life. He had that kind of comeback to it. It's great to see that, but more importantly, it is great to be able to tell those wonderful parents, especially those single moms. It is wonderful to tell them how great they are to have had a child that's sitting here getting to go through this process and getting to have this kind of scrutiny and still sitting here available and in play. Thank you, Mama, and congratulations to you. You've done a magnificent job. That's the principal reason right there. And I know that the players, it means a lot to them, too. It's a big deal for me.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. This is for Will. Usually you get a first-year coach, there's a little bit of a transition of understanding what he wants, but Shoddy's been here a couple of years. So has that transition been a little quicker, smoother for you this go around?
Yeah, it's been quicker because Shoddy knows what he wants and explains it very clearly. He understands our process. He's testing the conviction and bringing his points out in it. So it's been a seamless sort of process. And, when you talk about our process, was talking with the scouts the other day. We're the wholesalers. We know where the fruit are. We're the wholesalers. We're saying what they can do. We're giving it to the coaches. The coaches make up the recipe, and then they own the restaurant. So it's how we all work together. We're trying to get this thing the right way, and there's the consistent way that we do it. And then Shadi saying the little ingredients that they want that are a little bit different than this staff or that staff. It's the communication, and then us drilling down to try and find those things that make the little bit of difference.
Quick one for Shadi. As an assistant coach for a long time, how did you observe the head coaches and say, okay, when I get my shot, I won't do this or I might do that in terms of the draft process?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just to be open and honest, to create a format, which we certainly have done, where there was open dialogue and there was great communication. And at the end of the day, you want conviction. That's what you want. You want, when you decide, hey, this is the player we're going to select, you want to be convicted by what's the vision for the player. That's part of our responsibility as a staff to answer some of those questions. But at the end of the day, the systems on both sides of the ball and special teams will be flexible enough to adjust. And at the end of the day, when we line up to play our first game, there's going to be 11 players out there, and whoever the best players are going to be the ones that play.
Nick Harris, 4-Star Telegram. This is for anyone on the board. I know you guys want to be in a position where you can take best player available at 12. How much do you factor in need on this team when it comes to these premium picks, or are you trying your best to stick to the board in this first round?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you are trying to pick the best player on the board. Now, if it's up there and you got guys who are, equally graded for the most part, then obviously you might lean into a position where, hey, we could use a little more help there, and we're pretty strong over here, so let's lean in over here and take that player. But what you don't want to see yourself doing is, picking a player who's quite a bit down the line, a round down, and trying to take that player over a guy that you've got situated, in particular, let's use the 12th pick. If, we got first-round grades on players on our board, you want to take that player. And, at the end of the day, those things work themselves out. I mean, we never went into that draft, Micah's draft, thinking we were going to pick Micah and a pass rusher / linebacker. The year we picked CD, we were thinking we were going pass rusher all the way, and we end up with a receiver. And, great things happen when you do things like that. And, we were just having that conversation the other day about, you just got to, you got to stay true to where these grades are and what these players are, and good things will happen because in this league, players, they rotate through, and if you got young guys coming, it allows you to maybe put resources rather than keeping a guy that you can put with somebody else that enables your team to be better, and that's ultimately our goal.
And for Brian, there's a lot of players in this draft class that have athletic traits, physical traits, but then there's questions about production with some. How do you value traits versus actual production from the college level?
Well, it's the traits that actually give you the chance to project, whether it's speed, size, change of direction, things like that. You try not to get too caught up in just the numbers. The numbers are what they are in terms of 40 time and things like that. The game film to this day is still the best thing, in my opinion, when you're studying a player. And then the one thing you didn't mention was the person. We're looking for those world-class competitors, the guys that are coming in and want to work hard. They're passionate about what they do. So it really is a puzzle that you're trying to fit together. And to me, traits are one of the pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to figure out.
Patrick.
Hey guys, Patrick Walker, DallasCowboys.com. Question more so for Stephen, Will, and especially Shadi. Jerry, feel free to chime in, obviously. When you're looking at BPA versus D, if you're looking at a situation where, let's say hypothetically, there are 2 or 3 wide receivers who can instantly make an impact, but they have different archetypes for the most part, at what point do you start having the discussion about current personnel as far as being able to slide that scale more towards need versus BPA? How did that discussion come along in the war?
I think I hit on it a little. I just think it matters on the variations. What is the difference? And, if we got to use our terms, if we got a player with a 1.14 and a player with a 1.15, now that's really close. And, in terms of, picking a player who maybe fits your, maybe scratches an itch, if you will, in terms of picking a player that's going to fit a need, even though you might have a tenth of a point. In the big scheme of things, that's not a big deal. But if you're picking a guy who's got a 1.24 over a 1.14, then to me that's when mistakes are made, and you're ended up getting a player that you felt like was a second-round player versus getting a player you could have taken that's a first-round player. That'd be my take.
Jake Slater, NFL Network. I'm old enough to remember the last time we had an exciting quarterback fall to the Cowboys when they came up. Have you guys gone through that scenario if there was an exciting quarterback like, say, Jackson Dart or Shedeur Sanders there at 12?
Yeah, well, we've got a major commitment with Dak, and so you weigh all of that. And but I was going to add to this whole conversation, it's very often that somebody will step up and say, "Now we got this guy right here. We've got him, and we just signed him under contract." But guess what? Guys get hurt. So you bet your whole house that you got him, and then all of a sudden you don't have him. So that's when your old mind starts saying, well, if this guy did get hurt, what would we do this year? There you go. There you go. But don't misinterpret. All I'm saying is that you have to figure that rather than say we've got him, we don't have that need. You have to figure that there's some injury to be. Now, how important is that player as opposed to the one you're looking at on the board? And could he fill that need right there? I do that. I really do. And so if we've got depth and that guy gets hurt, that's one thing. If you're left out in the cold for right now and you need that, that's another thing.
Saad.
Saad used to be athletic. Steven, you guys obviously have a need at cornerback with Trayvon recovering. We just saw Stephon Gilmore walk out the building. Just, what can you say about his visit here?
Well, we always are looking to make our roster better, is what I'd say about any player. Obviously, we did some work in free agency via trade with Elam, and certainly we're fired up about Carson coming back off an injury that really limited to him after he had that after the first 3 or 4 games. So we do feel like we've got some good corners, but we're always looking to make things better. Now, we have players who we'd like to think love to come back and say hi, and it doesn't always mean because they're in the building that there's a deal in the works. But I think in general, our player acquisition, I always say it's year-round, and we're always looking to get better. And if we see that opportunity, then we'll do it. Obviously, there's a big focus on the draft right now, but it doesn't rule out that we're not looking at trades or still looking at signing other players.
And Will, a lot of the players coming out right now, when COVID hit, they were right in the middle of high school. I'm curious, what are you seeing in your conversations, your evaluations, as how maybe them going through that time has kind of shaped them differently than a lot of other players in the past?
I think the environment of college football has changed in general. You throw the COVID year in there, and then, there's some players that are in this draft that are 24 years old, 25 years old. And it kind of changes the environment that we basically the premise that we start and do in this business is you're looking for guys, blah, blah, blah. It changes the conditions. NIL, there's guys that go to 3 different schools, all of that. It changes the environment. We have to adjust with that to try and get the right information, make sure we know who they are, take all those things into consideration. It changes the puzzle a little bit.
Kyle.
Kyle Yeomans, Dallas Cowboys TV. First one for Coach and then a follow-up for Will. But sticking with corners and cornerbacks, in the past there's been plenty of significant influence from coaching staffs and defensive staffs when looking at cornerback prospects. How do you guys view some of the measurables when you evaluate some of these corners?
Yeah, I think it's, there's certainly measurables. You want length, you want size, you want the ability to play press man-to-man. The big thing for us defensively is, Flus says it this way, there's no house guests. So everybody's got to be willing to tackle and support the run with the things that we do. But, again, they come in all shapes and sizes, man. And, again, a guy that's maybe a little bit, shorter, a guy a little bit maybe faster. Again, if they have the right play style, if they have the right temperament, and we see some of those things in that regard to play style, the physicality, the ability to, we're always looking for ball skills. We call it ball production. If you find ways to create turnovers, that's really a good thing for your team. And again, I think Will and his staff did an incredible job with that. So it was very seamless for us from a coaching staff to be able to speak to Jerry and Steven and Will and his staff, because they did such a great job of kind of setting the table. I'll say it this way. I mean, honestly, the scouts are the experts. Like, these are the guys at 365, 24/7. They are on the road. They are working. They know these guys better than anybody else. And then what's been great for us is the communication process of what we want from the system or the players to fit into the system. That's where it's been such a cool conversations.
And Will, 4 defensive coordinators since the start of 2020, how much of a challenge has that placed on you and your staff to get that right and have those conversations back and forth to make sure that the owners of the restaurant that you talked about earlier are on the same page?
I think ultimately we have to know the value and be consistent with the value of players, right? We've got to value them the same way year after year, not depending upon the strength or the weakness of the draft, so that you have a standard that you abide by. So when we say a first-round corner, we all know what a first-round corner is. There are certain measurables and things that you look at because that's what plays in the league, and that's what's had the most success. We look at all that information, and then as Shadi says, we got to dig into the people. The biggest mistakes are made when it's the people that you get. It's what are you putting them into and who's communicating with them. So a big part of what we're doing is understanding the coaches, what we're trying to do, and then get to know the players and try and figure out the fit as well as the ability. So with the input of the coaches and our whole staff and the scouts doing that, we're trying to get to know the players as well.
Joe.
Joe Trahan, WFA TV. Jerry, this was for you. Steve was talking before about that CD draft when you picked him, the Micah draft when you picked him. Can you describe what the room is like once the draft goes live and you're waiting to see how you have to read and react as players come off the board?
Yeah. I think, to me, as they come off, I'm just focusing on what happens when he gets there. Okay? If as they're coming off, I don't like there, then I'm saying, boys, is that phone ringing? And by the way, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. Picking up the phone and calling will not do the job. The phone has to be ringing. Well, if I'm not hearing that phone ringing and it's not ringing, then you start really looking at your alternatives. We traded that. Mike is perfect. Mike is perfect. We get there, boy, they want a top one, but we had right below, you've heard this story a million times, we traded down and didn't take Micah then because we got something there and we still had 2. Well, then the rest of them went, and there you got Micah. That's the classic exercise right there. You got looking at it, playing it. Didn't exactly work right for us, but we ended up getting a top player after all. And so the big thing, I think Will hit it the very best of all. The mistakes, which is the hardest thing to evaluate, is the player person, and their desire, what's inside them. And I mean, you just can't substitute for somebody that has got talent plus that. And so there's a whole lot of time spent around here looking for what's inside these guys, and should be. And that's something we look at real good. This bunch was hot about what was inside Martin when he was dropped, what was inside him. We were hot about what was inside of Tyron Smith, what was inside him, what had gotten back from him. And that's when we've really done the best.
And then, Stephen, for you, you talked a couple times about not reaching, and you have players that are similar. But my question is this, because you said this a lot through the years. Have you done enough in free agency to make sure that you can be clean in this year's draft and not have to reach for a need, even in the later round?
Yeah, I think, that's what I was mentioning at corner with Elam. I think we did overall a much better job than, say, last year of really, doing quite a bit of volume in terms of really improving our roster and giving us, the opportunity and having an environment where we can pick the best player. And I think our work we did in free agency is going to really pay off. I think it's going to make us a deeper football team, one way or the other. And what we add through this draft should, just make us better and increase the depth that we have. And, most of the time, 99% of the time, that's our goal in free agency, not necessarily to go out and sign, the highest paid guys. Obviously, we signed one. He was our own, Osa, to a big deal. But, that's the way we look at free agency. And historically, we've had, a lot of success in getting those guys, which I think in turn has led, as Jerry mentioned, it's just if you look at the number of starters you've gotten, the number of Pro Bowlers, the number of All-Pro guys, we've drafted at a high level compared to the rest of the league.
Jonah.
Over the last, 8-10 years, we've seen a number of contract holdouts linger through training camp and then sort of disrupt the start of the season in terms of chemistry. What gives you confidence that that won't be the case with Micah Parsons this year for Jerry and Steven?
Nothing. Nothing. That's not the right answer. That's the answer you're looking for. But the facts are the contracts are clear what happens. And so, but you do have holdouts. And it's a plus that was bargained. That goes on between the players and the teams. And I know you don't need that kind of history lesson, but my point is, you have some. We had it with Martin, and Martin held out. And one way to look at it was we got him, and we had a hell of a year with Martin on that 1 year.
Sure.
But we also spent $8 million that we'd love to have the next year to go get another player, extra.
No, I think that inherently happens when you're, when you're negotiating with great players. I mean, you can find examples all over the league. San Francisco with Bosa, I don't think he came in till 2 days before the first game, and I think they had a hell of a playoff run. So, everybody wants to look for reasons, and we're always critiquing ourselves as to why we didn't have a good season. And I know one of the things that come up other than injuries is the fact that, although Dak never missed a practice, he never missed anything that he was required to be at. The flip side of that is CD did. And so that becomes an issue. But I don't think it is. I just think it inherently comes with the territory. I mean, you look around the league, and most of these players who are getting these very top contracts, it does take time to ultimately get there. And believe me, if we could sign Micah to a number we wanted to sign him to, we'd do it right now. But right now, there's a difference in what we feel like is the right number and what he feels like is the right number.
And a quick follow-up to that, I mean, there's a perception that it's just the team is dragging its feet on these contract extensions, whereas agents have to play a role in this too. And have you encountered this over the years where maybe agents are slow in wanting to make a deal because they want to see the market keep getting reset so they can get their player the maximum amount? Because there are two sides to this negotiation, so I'm just curious what we're not really seeing behind those, those talks.
I think you're right on it. I mean, that's exactly what happens. And a lot of times representatives of these players do want to wait. And they think the longer they wait, the market goes up. And, I will say this. A lot of times we want to not do a player a year earlier because we want to make sure, because you only get to choose a handful of guys that are going to make these big, big numbers. I mean, there's, maybe as much as a half a dozen guys max that can really, make an inordinate amount of money. And you want to make sure if you're limited to 5 or 6 of these guys that you pick the right 5 or 6. in terms of who you choose, and at the same time, the representatives want to wait and make sure he gets the optimal amount of money that he can get for the players. So, it's just not perfect, but it's part of it. And there's a lot of teams that have players that wait till the bitter end to sign that go on and have a great year, and then there's other teams that sign a player late and maybe don't have the type of year they had hoped to have.
The reason that I don't like to, on certain situations, certain contracts, that I don't like to deal with the agent. By the way, I don't necessarily deal directly with attorneys when I've done things over my life. I've dealt with the principal, not with the attorney. It's not demeaning. They have excellent advice. But many, many times I've gone straight there. We had a great player here, Des Bryant. We had a major negotiation set up with his agent, Jay-Z. We met Jay-Z in New York. We started at 11 at night. We finished about 5 in the morning. Jay-Z had his advisors talking about Dez. We sat there, had one of the greatest. I'll tell you right now, Jay-Z is one of the most first-class people I've ever been around. And I mean, he's got his act together. He was putting together excellent people to be represented by Jay-Z. And those he wanted to have the greatest work habits. He wanted to have the greatest punctuality. And it wasn't just football or basketball. It was actors, and it was people of all walks of life. And what he said is when you have a meeting, I've never been late for a meeting in my life, Jay-Z, and said, I've met on street corners. And he said, I'm always on time, if not early, with it. If they don't make meetings, they won't be in my organization. I can tell you that right now. Okay? If I'm representing him, he'll be at all the meetings. Because you see, the agent is normally maybe 1,000 miles away when they're not there, or when you're not getting some of the things that you work with on a daily basis with the team. They aren't around. They're there in spirit, but they're not there right on it. I said, Jay-Z, you mean to tell me that Dez will not miss any more meetings? Yeah, Dez won't. He said he will not miss any more meetings. I said, can I call you every time he misses meetings? Can I call you? He said, yes, sir. I'm telling you what it is. I said, hand me the pen. I'm in. We're gone. Let's go. I called you for Dez. Well, Dez missed some meetings, and I think a lot of Dez. I think a lot of Dez, a lot of him wouldn't have done. And he's really a great player, and I like him as a person. But I'm going to tell you one thing: Jay-Z wasn't any place to be found when we were having problems with our football team. I like to go to those key players and be with them and have it right there with them and make sure we were on the same page. Does that sound logical? Okay, that's the way it happens.
All right, you got to follow that up, Joe.
Sounds good. Joe Hoyt, DLS Sports. Jerry, you guys have used 2 of your last 3 first-round picks on offensive linemen, signed a lot of veteran offensive linemen, but you also had 30 visits with a couple offensive linemen. Long question short, would your previous investments in the offensive line keep you from using high investment in an offensive lineman in this draft?
One of the things that when we started this draft process with, we had a coach and we had their offensive, and boy, are we in great shape. One thing Shotty did, he did it right when I said, boy, we want some attention to that offensive line, and he gets his coordinator. That's one heck of an expert there, and he gets one of the best offensive guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Team within the team, the offensive line. And so one of the things that we started the meetings off with was, guys, we've had some of the best offensive lines around Dak known to man. And we've also had some pretty good running backs around him, too, around the same deal. Can you put that kind of resources in your offensive line? And can we get up there playing around the rim so that we can get one of these things with that offensive line? And I said, we've been with Larry Allen. We got one when he was rookie. Other than that, we didn't get one. Okay, Zach, we didn't get one. Okay, so it doesn't automatically work. Okay, but generally when you step back and look at it, we've had some pretty good teams around a War Daddy drafted offensive line with a lot of ones. Obviously, when those guys get ready to come up, if they're that kind of player, then you're going to have a lot of resources invested in that offensive line out there with it. Did it pay off? Well, it's done a pretty good job for Dak. Did a good job for the running backs that were around him, pretty good there. So as you've got something to look at. We won't necessarily eliminate, because we've got the resources we have in the offensive line this weekend. We won't eliminate that because of that experience. We've had some success with loading it up with top picks in the offensive line.
Quick follow-up too, Will. A couple teams have kind of abandoned using 30 visits. I know you and Jared kind of touched on this a little bit, but what is the overall thing you're looking for from 30 visits and the strategy behind having 30 visits?
It's getting to know the players, right? It's getting them in front of us. It's some guys have to see the doctor. They don't have medical stuff, so there's a process that we go through with those guys. But it's getting to know them. That's one opportunity. We have formals and informals at the combine. We can Zoom them. We have a number of different ways, and we use all of those to our disposal to learn about the players. 30 visits is just another opportunity to get them in front of us and do some of our side things that we do with them.
Pat.
Pat Doney, NBC DFW. Brian was going to ask, with your potential interest in emphasizing the running game in this offense, how much do you think the runner matters? The running back position has gone up and down in value and how it's perceived. For you personally, how much do you think the running back matters in your offensive scheme?
I think the runners they matter. It's one of the aspects. You can do it a lot of different ways. I've done it a lot of different ways in my career, whether it's by committee, whether it's a guy that's seen as the bell cow. I think this is an incredibly deep draft at running back. You can find guys that, again, when you're watching them on film, you see the traits and the things that you like. You can have a vision for them, what they would look like fitting into our scheme that, Clayton and the staff are going to put together. But again, I think, it's a position like others where it's not just the player, it's the talent, all those things, but it's also the person, the wiring. Like you're hearing us say that across the board here, the person matters. The football character, the love of the game, those things matter. And I think there's a number of those guys at that position in this draft that we're excited about.
And then building upon that for Jerry, we've seen you take Ezekiel Elliott really high in the draft, and then we've seen this team not emphasize the running back. Seeing somebody like Saquon Barkley and what he did for Philadelphia last year, has your thought about the running back position changed from what it might have been from the future?
Well, Saquon and Philadelphia got your attention. There's no question about it. You'd be dead if you're doing what we do and not see that happen. I don't think that running back was as significant last year and us not getting where we wanted to go as you do, and maybe others. I don't. I think it was our offensive line. That was the bigger impact of the running back situation. Now, you say, well, but still, you didn't have that. You had an opportunity to get those kinds of running backs. I would say that that got my attention. I would say. Now, we hit on a Murray in the 4th round here a few years back, and he was a doggone good running back. Ooh, look at that offensive line he had in front of him. Think about it. Look at that offensive line that Zeke had in front of him. And so I get it completely, the lack of having our offense. It hurt us a little bit to lose Dak early, and y'all know that's condescending as far as the running game was concerned. That didn't help the running game. So this is not excuse time here, but it is appropriate that you'd ask that question, because can you cure the running game with the back? You can help it, in my mind.
CBS Sports. For Stephen, Jerry, and Will, you mentioned having a big commitment to Dak, talking about having a big commitment to Micah. How much do those contracts impact your willingness or aggressiveness in looking to trade down and acquire more picks?
Well, I think, obviously it's a big commitment of resources, but and part of why it's so important to draft is to complement the high end part of your roster from what it takes from a resource standpoint with cap dollars. So it is important to get these draft picks. Now, as it turns out, we've got a good number of draft picks because we've lost players through free agency. We've pushed some of those picks down with trades, like a Joe Milton, who we felt like, when we looked at the quarterback depth in the draft and what we could get versus what Joe might bring to the table, we thought that was, a good trade to make. So we've pushed some of those picks back, but we still have, 10 picks. So we think we've got a good number of picks. I don't think we would let that dictate to us whether we move back or not. It's going to be who's there and then what we get, not necessarily just to take a trade back to pick up a pick. It's got to be a value trade for us to make that decision.
Two experiences that we've had. Emmett held out, running back. And Emmett held out. We just won a Super Bowl. And with Emmett out, and Emmett wanted more money. And I get it. And we made him, and we wanted to make him the highest paid running back in the history of the NFL, but he wanted a quarterback. And understood him wanting that. But we couldn't do it. That was back literally before the cap. So that was just my old back pocket. And you just couldn't do that much and make this thing work. Why? Because I had to count on my back pocket, and I knew what was in there. Okay, so we couldn't do it. So this is pro football, and financial has always been here. It's always been here. Now, it's logically here now. So that the reason why that you delay is because you're wanting those resources to not go to there. You want it to go over to where you can have a better team around them. You empty that bottle to get that bottle, and you have less around them. Otherwise, you would just say whatever you want. And I'm not demeaning anybody here. I understand. I broke the rules on wanting to go make a buck. Seriously. So I get it. I do get it, and we all get it around here. Now, so this stuff of, well, we're waiting, it's going to cost you more, it's going to do that more. Have you ever thought that you might read more of the tea leaves if you wait a year or two? What if you had a key injury? What if you have key lack of performance? What if that's blasphemy. Don't talk about them not being the player you think they are. Well, that isn't blasphemy. That's something else to look at. Frankly, in my life, I have done better because of the tolerance for ambiguity that I have, running the quarterback all the way out and deciding whether to pitch or to turn it up himself rather than take the first option and hand it off. And I've done better out at the end. Now, have I had a bloodletting out there a few times? Yes, I have. But I've run it out at the end. And that's the reason why you do it, because you're trying to reduce the amount of outgoes so that you have some left to do it again. I know everybody understands it, but it's just real important. If you think for 1 second that we're letting a player not come in just because are we not sensitive about, well, you might be able to get him for less if you'll put that 5-year contract on him earlier. But you also could eat some players that you might wish you didn't put the money on, too.
Jeff Gold with Fox Sports. Jerry, for you, going back to the prospect of drafting a quarterback in the first round, again, something you haven't done since Troy. You mentioned having the major quit with Dak, having to weigh that. How does that impact how much time you spend on the first round grade quarterbacks, and also the possibility of having to have a conversation with Dak about that pick? How does that impact?
Well, the biggest reason is we're set in stone. Now, we weren't set in stone for what happened to us last year, were we? Because he's the highest paid player in the NFL. What was it, 3 games later? Or 4 games? 4 games later, we don't have a quarterback. There, highest paid player in the NFL. Will it happen? Can it happen? Of course it can happen. You can happen. And I say that again. We are not in the business around here at this time of looking for our future quarterback. By the same token, the fact that we are sitting up here, we have to always be thinking about the future quarterback. And we have to mainly be thinking about what happens if we don't have Dak. So that might impact you here in some way. It's probably not as likely as it would be if you were 5 years from now or 6 years from now as you go on down the road. We'll see. It's not taking one thing away from or adding to Dak. We're so proud to have him because we've got one of the best, and he gives us a chance to win this thing.
And even though we have one, we evaluate them all the same every year because you have to know what's in the league.
But one of the best things that I think that I've been a part of was drafting Aikman in the first round and Steve Walsh in the supplemental, same year, first round. Used 2 first-round picks. Had both of them sitting here. Okay? And, of course, that created angst, enough for you to really write about, obviously. Troy didn't like that at all, okay? That's a little unfair bringing in the coach's college quarterback to play on the same team you've just been drafted on. I get it. And admire him for working through that with Jimmy. So, and that turned out to be good. I got to New York, sat up there, Jim Finks. We made a trade of a life on what's his name, and there we go. It turned out. Well, now you can't read that on the draft room of something like that turning out. But I'll tell you what, Tex Tram did tell me back when we were talking after I'd bought the team. One of the best moves he ever made was had 3 top quarterbacks out at Los Angeles and traded a couple of them, and they were some of the names of the greatest quarterbacks ever. He said, you can go with having, in the same draft, you can go with having multiple top quarterbacks. That was then, this is now. But I'll tell you, it influenced me. And it was easy to do because Walsh was Johnson's quarterback at Miami, and he was Shula's, who was his coordinator. Shula was the coach of him at Miami. So it was easy for us to do. It was the move to do at the time, and we got out by having Aikman, and we got multiple on our draft picks. Worked.
Kevin.
Kevin Sherrington, Dallas Morning News. Jerry, I'm wondering if it makes it a little easier this year to take the best player available if you know that he'll probably meet a need.
Yes. 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 And that's not different type thinking, Kevin, at all.
Would you say there is as many options available for you or because of that as there has been probably over the last 4 or 5 years?
Excuse me, what?
Probably as many options available to you this year to do that as there have been for 4 or 5 years?
Well, we've got, are you saying, can I ask you a question about your question? Are you saying we have a few needs? Okay. I thought you were. And yes. In answer to your question, yes.
Brad Sham, Cowboys Radio on 105.3 The Fan. Brian, you are in your first year on the job, and you have a number of staff members that you've hired who are new to the NFL or fairly new to it. How empowered do you think you and these other guys will be on standing on the table on draft day and getting real strong for somebody you believe in?
I think knowing these guys for the past couple months, they'll be very comfortable. We hired guys that have conviction, guys that are experts at what they do, whether they coached in college or the NFL, doesn't matter. The cool thing with a couple of college guys is they've known some of these draft prospects since they were in high school, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, Junior Adams, Connor Riley, guys like that. But I think Jerry, Stephen, and Will would all say that these guys have a voice, and they're going to use their voice.
And I'd say this, Shotty. They're on the line, boy. This is big time. So put it out there. And so they know that if they can, in their opinion, do a better job as a coach. So if I were them, I'd be crying. I'd be jumping up and down. I'd be doing, and that's, and I get that. I really do get it. And this is their time to go. This is Shotty. If Shotty's ever wanted a pick and felt like choking somebody or doing anything. This is probably, it ought to be his highest motivated moment.
Sydney.
Sydney Staples, Beach 10 Sports. First question for Jerry. What should a fan be really excited for coming out of this draft?
I think that I would first look at our core. I would look at the core, and I'd start with Dak. And I would look at Micah. I would look at some of the top players. I'm a half full guy, not a half empty guy. So I would always start by, on that side of the page, our pluses. And then, if your question is about this draft, I would see, just as we're going to do it, and that's where it's going to happen, is we're going to put somebody on that draft side that adds to it. That's a plus. Stephen said, build that roster. And so that if they see the build a roster, I get a lot of criticism for being as involved as I am and having the record that I've got for being involved, let's say, about players, draft players and what have you. And I know that there's a lot of criticism there. The alternative to that is you couldn't be more on the incentive plan. And the incentive plan has to do more, if it's a mess, I live with it. Okay, now you say, but your fans live with it, Jerry. Your fans live with it, and they do. They do. What I would hope for them is the same thing I'm hoping from Shoddy. Here he is, 20-something years in the NFL. Damn, here he is now, head coach. Step out like that. And boy, I expect him to be coming out like he was fighting Tyson and getting after it the whole way. And I like that kind of stuff. I've seen us have success when you're that kind of motivated and you'll just get into it and put the passion into it. And I really do see a lot of passion around here, starting with this guy sitting right next to me. None of us like to sit there and watch it on TV.
Second question is for anybody. What are the intangibles, the must-haves of a player when you're looking to draft them, when they are sitting in your locker room? What are those must-haves of a Dallas Cowboy?
For me to represent the ownership and the coaching staff, and what we have to find out is how much do they love football. At the end of the day, if you love it, you will do whatever it takes to maximize your ability. And we got to go through a number of steps to find that. Right? These guys are getting paid in college now. There's so many other factors that we have to get to, but that's why spending time with them, the coaches being involved with it, our process is you got to find out who the guys are and if they love football. If you love it, you'll do anything for it to improve, and realizing the value of teammates, winning, competitiveness, all of those things.
And we're going to close out the way we started. David?
Brian, this is for you, and this is in I know the decisions made this week are organizational and everyone's a collaborative effort, but kind of touching off what Jerry said a second ago, this will be your first player you've taken as a head coach. What is the significance, or do you see the symbolism of that in the message it sends your team and players as far as who you're looking for and what type of player you want going forward? Is it that big of a moment, or is this just another step in what you're doing all off season to get to the start?
Well, I mean, it's a big step, but I wouldn't say that it's a symbolic moment for me. We're going to add great players throughout this entire draft, and it doesn't end after the draft ends. We're going to find and continue to keep looking under every stone to find guys that fit into what we want to do as a culture and what adds value to our team. But I know one thing. Whoever we add on Thursday night, it will be through tremendous amounts of hard work from the top down, from Jerry, Stephen, Will, Mitch, Chris Vaughn, the entire scouting department, the coaches, and it will be someone that's going to make the Cowboys fans proud.
All righty. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.